Hello and welcome to episode number 59 of Behind the Impact. I'm your host, Jeremy Brown. In this episode, Jonathan Perri, the Director of Global Social Impact at Ripple, joins the show. Jonathan, welcome to Behind the Impact.
Hey, Jeremy. It's great to see you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Where I would like to start first is learning more about your background and how you actually got into this wonderful world that we call social impact or corporate social impact, rather. Can you give me that story?
Yeah, sure. I don't, and it's not a very linear path. It's been kind of all over the place, but um, I started in the nonprofit space right out of college and ended up at change.org, the online petition platform, around 2010 or so, and was a relatively early employee there. And this is back when online petitions were kind of genuinely reshaping how people were engaging with causes. And um, this sort of powerful example of technology at scale at the time, there were tens and then hundreds of millions of people joining the platform. And for me, I was there for about 8 years, and it was a big eye opener to the power of technology and that connection to social impact and how it can empower both individuals and organizations uh, to create change around their causes. And from there, I ended up moving to Lime, the e-bike and e-scooter company. I joined their policy team, and I was there for about 3 years with a focus on community impact. And that included also back to that tech for good work where I was managing their round up and donate feature within the app so riders could take a trip and then round up to local bike organizations, bike safety, road safety organizations were generally what we were doing and supporting and working with. And also an equity program where we offered discounted or free rides to low income riders in many of the cities that we worked with. So, you know, it was sort of this experience in both private sector and then seeing how these fast moving tech companies can build impact into their products. That's what eventually ended up pulling me to Ripple, which is where I've been for just coming up on 5 years now. And yeah, for me, it's always been that connection growing and growing about how technology can not just do good on the side, but where can we build it into what companies actually do?
You made the leap from nonprofit to corporate, and that is something that many nonprofit professionals are looking to do. I can't tell you how many professionals in the nonprofit space I've spoken to over the years that are itching to get into the corporate sector. How did you make that leap? What was there something about the corporate sector that was pulling you in that direction?
Yeah, I think for me it was a unique path. I think that the change.org transition was unique because we used to joke at the time, like working at Change was this combination of being at a tech company because we were building a platform. There were engineers, there were developers, but then there was also it was also like being at a political campaign or a nonprofit, and so that was almost like a very like a soft landing pad or soft transition to from the nonprofit space into the corporate world. It was also allowing me to bring my understanding of working at a nonprofit to helping the partners that we were working with and bringing on to the platform and working on campaigns with. And uh, that made the transition over, I was there for about 8 years. And so the transition over to a company like Lime was definitely a big jump. And I think there were some unique things there too at the time. My background and work around mobilization, that tech for good component were really things that Lime was looking for at the policy side. Like they wanted someone who could bring knowledge of nonprofit organizations, of engaging and talking with large communities over to their platform, localize that and use that through the app. So there were, thankfully, at least for me, there were these connections between that work I did with nonprofits and understanding them, and then also being able to understand how a tech company works and how tech can be used for good. That made that transition a lot smoother. And then, I think worked as well for when I came over to Ripple, which is an entirely different industry. but and one that I wasn't that familiar with, financial technology, had some interest in it, especially issues around like financial inclusion. But totally new industry for me. Again, I think really just putting myself out there. I did not have a referral for the job at Ripple. It was a role I cold applied for and ended up getting, and still feel very lucky for that. And um, yeah, it's wasn't a clear linear path, but one that you just have to keep putting yourself out there for. And I think the other big helpful thing, and I have these conversations with people who are looking to make that transition all the time. I have more or less an open door policy for folks who want to reach out and have a conversation about what they might be able to do to make that transition. But continuing to talk to other people in the corporate social impact world, or even your nonprofit friends with strong connections in that world, can be really helpful.
If you transported back to that moment in time where you went from change.org to Lime and you're now in the corporate sector, was there anything that was surprising about how impact operates within a corporate environment?
I mean, I think the biggest things are your scale gets a bit larger. There's potentially more resources. There's more interaction with teams that weren't necessarily present at your previous company or would be present at a nonprofit, right? So you're working with these with more core business development uh, components. You have more maybe geographic coverage. So it starts to be things like that, and then you're tying a bit more closely your role to business outcomes. That starts to become, I think, kind of the biggest or bigger gap um, that gets closed.
Let's pull that thread a little bit more. The business outcomes. That is a pretty big topic of conversation right now in terms of connecting impact work to business outcomes, driving business value. From the seat that you sit in at Ripple, what are your thoughts about driving business value through an impact function?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I'll back up a little bit and kind of explain what Ripple is, which would probably be helpful for some folks. I mean, especially if you're not in fintech or in payments, you maybe haven't heard of us, but Ripple is a company that builds modern financial infrastructure. We're trying to bridge the gap between traditional finance and digital blockchain-based solutions. So there's a lot of friction in cross-border finance. So if you think of a business in the United States that needs to pay suppliers in Asia, or people or businesses in places with volatile currencies who want access to the US dollar, the status quo for all of this has been really slow, expensive, complicated flows with lots of middlemen over the years. And we have two products. We have multiple products, but two of them, Ripple Payments and ROUSD, which is our stablecoin, are solutions to this. And those help to make payments faster, cheaper, more transparent. We work with banks, we work with fintechs to help move money across borders in ways that the traditional financial systems just haven't been able to do. So sitting right at the center part of that is social impact. So you can think about issues like financial inclusion and being able to move money faster and more affordably, what that means to people who are sending money back home, what that means to businesses that are helping to facilitate, especially in emerging markets, facilitate those cross-border flows for their SMEs. And then we're starting more and more so to experiment with digital assets and our payments products with nonprofit organizations. So a lot of these, what I really started to realize after a couple of years here was a lot of the problems that we're solving for banks or for other fintechs are the same problems nonprofits that work in a lot of countries are having. They're having difficulty getting money into the countries where they operate. It costs a lot. They're losing a lot of the impact on some of this. It takes longer than it should. Can we start to apply some of those problem solving solutions we have to our nonprofit partners? That's where we really started to connect to the business goals. And what that's looked like uh, pretty recently is, I mean, there's one side of this of just driving utility, improving utility for what is essentially new financial technologies, right? Or newish financial technologies, blockchain, crypto, stablecoin, digital asset custody. these are all relatively new, and the more proof points we can have to demonstrate uh, their utility, that ties right back to our business goals, right? And so we've been doing that through our multiple partnerships, um, helping to show that there are these really great outcomes that we can have with our nonprofit partners. We've been funding and conducting pilots. And then we also have the University Blockchain Research Initiative. That is our one of our longest running social impact programs called UBRI. And that's where we fund blockchain courses, education, research on college campuses all around the world.
And so, can you take me a little bit deeper into what impact at Ripple looks like in terms of the team structure?
Yeah, I mean, so I think what's great about social impact at Ripple is there's just unwavering support for us to do good with our resources. Like we're genuinely in this core strategy camp. It's not just a checkbox for us. And I mean, our that comes from our co-founder and board chair Chris Larson to our CEO Brad Garlinghouse, our president Monica Long are all big supporters of the work we do and champions of that for within Ripple Impact, which is what we call our impact arm. But we have four sort of core pillars of our impact work, and that is employee and community impact. So that's donation matching, that's local giving and volunteering, the work we do especially in the cities where we have offices. And then there's UBRI, the program I just mentioned, that's blockchain education and research. There is sustainability. A lot of that work is around carbon markets and also where we can connect blockchain to sustainable use cases. And then impact finance or financial inclusion, which is really where I go back to that core product or that product and business solution connection. This is where we're actually putting Ripple's products to solve real financial infrastructure um, problems. We are a small but mighty team. There's three of us. I have two colleagues who are focused full time on the UBRI work, the University Partnership Program, which is big. It's a lot of work. They funded about $75 million across 62 universities since 2018. And the rest, employee engagement, impact finance, and most recently the sustainability work is now falling under me with, of course, a lot of fantastic cross-functional support, especially from our folks on the product side, the business side, business development side, and our communications and marketing team.
I want to dive into Uber a little bit more. I remember you mentioning this at last year's virtual summit. And I'm curious, when did that program start?
2018. So it was really the formation of Ripple Impact, the first idea of creating a official beyond just the philanthropy that the company was doing, the idea of creating an actual social impact team and program was really born first out of the idea of Ubri. So how can we start to I mean, one of the main goals was how do we diversify and build a stronger workforce around blockchain, around financial technology? How do we ensure that the conversations on college campuses are happening around this new growing technology, that they're not only isolated at a few campuses? So that's really what that was born out of, and it grew very quickly into this incredible program that now has funded work in about 62 universities globally. It's expanding throughout Asia. Last year, that was the biggest area where we were expanding and launching new partnerships and doubling down on the existing ones. That also aligns really well with where we have offices. So we work with multiple Bay Area universities in Singapore. It's a great way for us to have a presence and connect with academics where we are based.
And when you take a step back and you think about how this program has developed over time, are there any lessons that you have learned from the evolution of this program?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have certainly We do a lot. I mean, it just from what I've said and the fact that there's three of us probably indicates that there's a lot happening here. So I think there can be moments in this. I know any social impact managers had this, but there can be moments of biting off a bit more than you can chew. There's that sometimes is a big lesson for us. This is a fast moving industry. The technology is changing a lot, and AI and the connection with blockchain as well is also changing things rapidly. So I think the big lesson is one to focus on the biggest, most impactful projects that you can, and start to learn to be able to say no to the things that might not have as strong of an outcome, which is can be really hard to do because you know it's still helpful and it's still impactful, or to find ways to scale the work to do that faster. I mean, I'm working with Claude all the time now, and it's helping me so much with workload and being more efficient. And I think that that's one of those that applies directly to that lesson of being able to evaluate the partnerships that and programs that you've ran, have an impact measurement uh, system in place, and be honest about evaluating what's working, what isn't, and focus where scalability is most likely.
So you mentioned a mighty team of three a second ago. How is the greater Ripple team involved in the work that your team is doing from an impact perspective?
It's we work really closely with folks within our stablecoin team. So RLUSD is our USD backed stablecoin. A stablecoin is, easiest way to explain it is a digital version of the US dollar. It's backed by our own reserves. So when you think about cryptocurrencies that move up and down in value all the time, the stablecoin does not. They've been fantastic, and this is part of our business development team, but been fantastic champions of the work that we do, and because it is helping to drive that utility. And so they're helping us to connect us with partners in the field on the ground that can then work with our nonprofit partners and help with things like off ramping the stablecoin into a local currency, into Kenyan shilling, if we're doing a pilot in Kenya. Uh, those things are really crucial for us to be successful here. We can't, it's hard to, it can be very easy to get your impact program into a silo. You can be heads down and keep working on things. And maybe if there's another learning here, that's one of them as well for me, is it can be easy to get into that silo and that um, just working on things with your external partners and not talking enough about it internally or bringing them in. So the stablecoin, the business development teams, the teams that work on our payments products as well have been really, really helpful because we've been starting to help some of our nonprofit partners come onto our payments platform and test this out and say and add it to their existing ways of moving money around the world. Wouldn't be able to do that without cross-functional support, and that's everything from the payments and the engineering team, the business development and partnership and customer success folks. It's also the compliance teams that have to, finance is a complicated, way more complicated than I think anybody who hasn't been embedded into it realizes, much more than I assumed. And so there's issues of compliance that come up, and KYC, and due diligence that need to take place. So without any of that cross-functional support, you're not able to get that done. And then I'll also just add, uh, our marketing and our communications team, we're putting the final touches on our annual impact report right now, which will be out at the end of the month, and just couldn't be more appreciative of the work, the help that we get from our communications team, our marketing team, our design team has put together this incredibly beautiful report, which I can't wait to share. So yeah, I think we're doing a really good job of increasing visibility internally of Ripple impact in our programs and our partnerships, and it's coming together through this cross-functional work.
And in terms of increasing visibility, what does that look like? And some context around this question. So cross collaboration, that in terms of a topic, that keeps coming up in conversations that I'm having with practitioners. I know that many practitioners are at a place right now where they're trying to figure out how to make their functions more durable. One of those ways is to ensure that they're socializing their work internally so people know what they do and why it matters. So I'm curious in terms of increasing visibility and what you've learned at your time at Ripple, and even before Ripple, what does that look like?
Um, you know, there again, because some of this comes back to us being a little bit lucky. I think creating a if your company uses Slack, Slack is a really useful one, but not if you're just putting things out into the ether, right? Like we have a Ripple Impact Slack channel, and lucky in the sense that every new hire is automatically added to that Slack channel. It's a great place for us to post updates about different partnerships. We I just posted this morning in there because on Friday we received a recognition from the Washington Business Journal for being one of the top, DC area corporate philanthropists. And you can see how well that resonates with employees who uh, aren't based in this office and otherwise wouldn't really know about it, but they get to celebrate that win and the fact that they work for a company that was recognized in this way. So I think Slack is one of those great ways to do that and to not be overly noisy with it, but be sure that you're sharing all of the small wins as best you can. Um, I think where you can get time within the company meetings, even if it's a bullet, if you have office bulletins every Monday, our fantastic workplace teams and workplace managers for each office post a bulletin in that office Slack channel, and we can use that to post a volunteer event or a recent, we'll use that when the impact report gets released. Those kind of visibility elements to employees generally is really helpful for building up your, if you have a question on the engagement survey about your employee engagement survey about your social impact work, that sort of visibility is really helpful. And then when it comes to engaging, leadership, that's almost maybe one of the more, and even to an extent, some of your cross-functional teams, right? It can be, uh, you have to be mostly like what's the best way that I like to frame this? A friendly pest, I think, to an extent, right? Like there might be this update that you're like, do I really need to send this to a C-suite member? Are they going to care? And just do it. Like just send that email that shares a win or celebrates a colleague on the cross-functional team that helps you out so that their manager sees that and knows that. Those things all increase visibility and it helps to stop that catching people off guard the next time you do make some big progress on a project or you need some additional buy-in or some resources for something. You've already laid that groundwork and you've increased that they know that you're going to be successful on this if they give you a little more support. So that's how I look at increasing visibility. There's a lot more I can do to get better at that too, especially when it comes to some of that cross-functional work and talking with leadership. But it's the right path, I think.
We talked a little bit about financial inclusion, and obviously financial technology, and you're just mentioning onboarding NGOs. Can you talk a little bit more about the financial inclusion work that Ripple is doing?
Yeah, and it's really been core to what we do. It's been after that university blockchain research initiative, UBRI was formed, investing in expanding economic opportunity and financial inclusion became really the second big pillar and driver of this work. And that's referring largely to by financial inclusion. That's largely referring to the fact that about 5 years ago, there's about 1.6 billion people who are completely unbanked in this world. This is mostly happening um, in developing economies, but thankfully we've been making progress on that. I think the most recent World Bank reports are about 1.4 billion people are still unbanked, and largely that's due to the increased access to digital finance, mobile phone expansion and opportunity, mobile money. Um, And so we've worked with a lot of organizations who are doing research into that, both through Ubri and then on our own, uh, more directly on the financial inclusion elements and not academic. And we provided some grants to some organizations who were doing the first exploration of can should we be piloting blockchain or crypto within our financial inclusion programs. I mentioned this before, but there's a lot of nonprofits, if they're moving a lot of money around the world, they're working in 40 different countries around the world. Um, they they're good at moving money into those countries and running programs in there, but there's still friction and bottlenecks. And so we provided some grants to organizations like CARE and to Mercy Corps to do some of their first experimentation with with blockchain and with crypto in some of those countries and in those markets? And could this help with things like access to capital? Could it help with cross-border payment flows? Could it help with their cash and voucher assistance programs that they run? I mean, a lot of people think about humanitarian aid um, being tents and meals and physical goods, and there is a lot of that too. But really, the most effective form is providing either whether that's disaster survivors or people living in ongoing poverty with direct cash or voucher payments where they're able to spend on what they need. It's both more cost effective for the organizations and also more effective for them to get the help they need. So, anyway, we ran a lot of these initial pilots and programs. Mercy Corps and Mercy Corps Ventures, which is the impact investing arm of Mercy Corps, have really been one of our longstanding partners on this. And we've worked with them on investing in. There's a huge financing gap in emerging markets in countries like Kenya, Nigeria, Brazil, Colombia, where you've got um, where you've got really great startups that are working within fintech, or they're building climate resilience solutions. They don't have access to capital to kind of scale some of those up. So our funding over the years with Mercy Corps Ventures has helped to invest in about 20 early stage startups throughout Africa and Latin America. And uh, that's also through those products and services with those investments reached about 14 million people on those continents as well. And it's a really fantastic partnership. It's scaled up to us doing pilot programs with our stablecoin as well. The most recent ones we did, we just wrapped up one with um, that uses RUSD. It was in Kenya and connects satellite vegetation data on a blockchain to Ripple USD, the stable coin. And using that data was able to automatically trigger payments every single time that the vegetation data suggested a drought was likely to happen. Um, so this is an anticipatory aid or anticipatory action model that ended up reducing the delivery time of payments by about 95% compared to traditional aid methods, and with cost savings over 60% over traditional methods, right? And so we're really trying to prove that there are really good sides to this technology, really strong use cases that's happening through these really core business partners. And there's quite a few others as well.
That's so interesting. And you mentioned a couple times partnerships, and I know that's your wheelhouse. What is their approach that you take to find really good partners and ensure that those partnerships are there long term?
We do a lot of multi-year grant making, so it's not one-off grants, and I think that is key. That's one of the um, especially when we're talking about blockchain and piloting new technologies, expecting them to solve this or prove everything in a year is unlikely and unrealistic, and it's a bad partner on the funder side, right? So our partnership with Mercy Corps Ventures started out as a 3-year partnership that we've now expanded into going on 6 with additional funding and use cases. So that's on our side, right? Like we have to be a good partner that can provide technological resources, that can provide funding, and that can give the partners time to figure this out. And then on the other side is we need to find, it depends on the use case, right? But if we want to focus on this financial inclusion piece, like we need to increasingly find partners who are nimble, who are innovative, who are willing to try new technologies and push the needle and kind of break out of their comfort zone, which gets harder and harder the larger the company is, right? Like you or the organization is.
Now, we talked about Ubri, we talked about grants, multi year partnerships. Now, thinking about all the work that you and your team does and bringing it back to driving business value for Ripple, what does that look like?
But going back to the financial inclusion piece, I mean, we've sort of moved away from that framing, and we call it impact finance now. And this is really an intentional move because it's the belief that really innovative financial solutions are actually the mechanisms for solving global problems. It's not just something we want to pilot and test here and there. And we want to go beyond just giving someone a bank account, right? Financial financial inclusion has largely been considered, well, they have a bank account now, so we count let's count them as financially included, right? And so unfortunately, that those people might not have. All they might have is one simple way to store some money, right? They don't have access to capital if they want to start a small business. They don't have access to savings programs or interest earning mechanisms. So this is where we're moving a lot more over the last couple of years is impact finance, and that means partnering with organizations that again are open to trying new technologies and that are innovative and kind of move fast. At a portfolio level, this is like we're supporting organizations like the World Central Kitchen. We had Jose Andreas speak at our annual Swell conference last year, talking a bit about some of the pilots and the work that we've done together, helping them use our Ripple payments platform to distribute money into Mexico after flooding last October, where it normally would have taken 1 or 2 days to get those funds in there. We were doing that in minutes for them. And International Rescue Committee, who is really big organization, and helping them to pilot and test using Ripple payments to move funds into the field again faster than traditional wires have helped them. So um, and but if you want to look at one of the most exciting examples, one that I really love, and this was just announced today, but we've just announced that Water.org is one of our newest partners, and Ripple has joined Get Blue, which is their massive new campaign just announced today. It's led by Matt Damon and Gary White, who are the co-founders of Water.org. Um, and if you're not familiar with Water.org, they provide microfinancing for water and sanitation projects and they've reached about 90 million people around the world with these affordable micro loans that allow people to get access to water and sanitation who otherwise wouldn't have it. This goes, I think a lot of people assume it's, going to Africa and building a well still is like the solution and then leaving. But this microfinancing model that they have called water credit is incredibly effective, and it is tied to effective and innovative financial solutions, going right back to, this new approach for us. So we've come on, we're going to be Ripple Water.org's sort of digital asset partner on this, helping them to use Ripple payments and to use RUSD to move that capital into these markets. We've been working on this for a few months together, and we've already reached more than 50,000 people. We've dispersed 12,000 loans, mobilized $6 million in capital for them already. And yeah, we're really just getting started on this. I think it's one of those clearest examples of tying the product and the business to real world impact.
For somebody that is not familiar with blockchain cryptocurrency, can you share a little bit about how this whole system works, more specifically focusing on Ripple and how Ripple works?
Yeah, there's a few different ways that Ripple works. So, I mean, we acquired two, well, really, I think three companies last year, and so there's a lot of growth happening. But we also now we offer digital asset custody. So it's sort of a white labeled product where banks that want to offer custody of digital assets. So if you're a client of theirs, you want to hold digital assets, you can use Ripple's infrastructure for that. So increasingly, you're seeing growing numbers of people and businesses that want to hold digital assets safely and compliantly. So we offer those solutions. Um, there is a prime brokerage now that we have, and also a treasury solution. So this is a company called G Treasury, which is now Ripple Treasury. So those are treasury management systems that can help you really forecast and see all of your assets, including digital assets alongside your cash assets, which is unique. And then on the payment side of things, that's kind of our bread and butter here, right? And this is where we've started, and it's our most well-known product and service. But what's really unique is these are fully licensed payment products. I think a lot of people still think of crypto as being kind of wild west and just go do whatever you want and just send. But we're a fully licensed payments product, so we're able to manage end to end the flow of funds. So when somebody wants to send USD and then have it go to their their partners or their beneficiaries in, let's say, Nigeria. Um, all they have to do is use Ripple payments to upload cash, USD, and we use, so they never ever have to touch, if they don't want to, even stablecoin, they don't have to touch crypto. They don't need to know anything about how blockchain rails work. But a blockchain transaction on a blockchain like the XRP ledger, which is the primary blockchain that Ripple builds on and uses, settles in 3 to 5 seconds, no matter how large that transaction is, right? So imagine you could send, and we did this. We did a $25 million donation to a nonprofit last year, and they had it in their, or $15 million, excuse me, and they had it in their wallet in 5 seconds, right? So there's these. We're able to do that for a business on the Ripple payment side, where what used to take days now takes usually at most hours, because we turn that cash into a stable coin in the middle. It gets sent to our payout partners, and then it gets converted back into the local currency of wherever that payment is taking place. So in this case, if it's NGN, if it's in Nigeria, they're just going to see NGN in their bank account. It's going to look like cash to cash transfer. But we also do this at more competitive costs and, of course, the faster speed. So that's how we're leveraging blockchain technology in our payments products, and how I think you can start to see clearly uh, the corporate solution for banks and fintechs, but also start to see where this is a solution for large nonprofit organizations.
Oh yeah, because I imagine, for a corporation giving out grants, if there's an organization that is in dire need of funding now, using a technology like Ripple, you're able to get the payment to that organization much faster.
100%. Yeah. Much faster, less friction, less middlemen. And um, and we're just seeing more broadly a lot of excitement. You know, Google stablecoin, or I guess ask ChatGPT about stablecoin is the more relevant framing right now, right? Um, if you're not familiar with stablecoins, just see all of the major financial players that are now involved in stablecoin, and this is becoming core financial infrastructure into how money is moved and kept all around the world. So it's really, we're at, I think, a tipping point of where digital assets and stablecoin in particular are embedded and part of the global financial system.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the corporate impact space as a whole. Right now, a lot of practitioners are struggling to figure out, how do I build a more durable function? They might be at companies like we talked about a little while ago that they may not have the executive buy-in that some companies have. Based off of your own experience in at Lime, at Ripple, obviously, if a practitioner came to you and was seeking advice around building an impact function that is more durable within their corporate environment, what advice would you give that person?
I mean, the easy thing to say is to tie it back to business value as much as you can. And I mean, that might be products and that might be business goals, but it also might be positive, brand affinity, positive sentiment. So can you develop the sort of campaign that doesn't necessarily cost a ton of money, but is creative enough to land a positive story, or is one that your media team or marketing or communications team can help to tell a story about? I think again, it's starting a bit smaller and developing the story behind what you're trying to achieve and what you want to do and why this is good for your business. You do have to be able to point to some positive outcomes and some data points. It's not. I think we're maybe shifting towards. I think there's always going to be companies that do good, only to do good. I think there are also going to be companies that do good because it's the right thing to do and they want to use their capital for that. They also have a opportunity to use their own products for good and to create additional impact that way. And that's, I think that's the sweet spot right there. It's not doing the good because it makes you look better. It's doing the good because it is positive for your brand and for your business. But in doing so, you actually drive more impact. You drive more sustainable impact in partnerships with your partners, and you make the case for continued support and funding. So I think that's really the starting point is you have to look kind of real hard at proving that this is worth investing in and that you can drive it uh, towards the outcomes that leadership is going to want to see.
What about skills? And the reason I ask this question is because I feel like the role of an impact practitioner is starting to evolve. It's less about just managing a program like a volunteer program or a grant making program and evolving into that, plus being more strategic in how you approach the work, how you communicate the work to the entire employee base, to the C-suite, etc.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely as you get beyond the program manager level role, if you were leading a team, you need to start to learn really from. I mean, God, I remember some of the first like emails that I sent to my manager here at Ripple a few years ago, and he said, "What is this email? Like nobody's going to read this. Like this is so long. Like, you need to put together an executive summary." And starting to build those those skills are really important. Like you need to know how to communicate effectively. Your leadership team, your executives do not have a ton of time, and there's a world in which they might not have. It may have even less time for social impact, especially if it's just starting out, especially if they think they've already checked the box. So yeah, I mean, thinking like an executive, or at least learning how to talk with executives, learning how to pitch your programs really well, putting together a clear deck versus a 10-page document, right? These are skills around storytelling and making your case that are really essential, basic skills towards getting that buy-in and those outcomes. And, and then I think the other pieces are just like, again, going back to some core skills here, like are you using OKRs to manage your impact metrics, right? Like, is the same, can someone who looks at the business function and has a set of OKRs, or if you're looking at the corporate, goals for the year and those OKRs, is what you have put together look completely different for your impact work, or are you aligned with how the other functions of the company are working, right? Like if you show your goals for the year to somebody else on the BD team or the marketing team, and they see a bunch of objectives and goals that have nothing to do with their work or their businesses, or they've just never even seen that structure before, or it shows that you're not really measuring and tracking your effectiveness, it's going to be really much harder to make the case for your work. So, yeah, align with impact measurement, develop some frameworks for that, and learn how to pitch.
Communicating with executives versus communicating with employees or just general colleagues. What's the difference?
I mean, I think the big thing is brevity, right? Like you need to be concise, and the executives, if they're in a role of making a decision for you, like one of the best things that I've learned is just if you're sending them a document, don't put the recommendation or the ask at the bottom of the document, right? The first thing should be like recommendation, right? So like that's how I would think about how you should be at the point where you're ready to make a recommendation about your social impact program or a new investment you want to make. Um, to get that sign off versus the conversation you're having with your colleagues about making the case for this, right? So those are longer conversations. That's where the planning document that might end up being 10 pages exists, right? That's where you put together the deck with those people and get their input on it before it comes up to an executive. That's the best way I would kind of explain the difference between those.
Okay, let's end with this. What's something that you now know about corporate impact work that you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
I mean, some of it comes down to the scale of some of the work. I mean, Ripple's very philanthropic. Even when the time that accepted the offer, I wasn't aware. A lot of this was not published or shared. We only started. I kicked off our first impact report. This will be our third one, so 3 years ago. We weren't doing impact reports. I had no idea that this company was doing around $25 million in grants, right? And then I also didn't, annually. I also didn't know that there were a lot of other companies doing similar amounts. Um, and I think having a better understanding of the landscape is really important, something to try to learn early on, especially within your own industry, if you want to be able to point to things that competitors are doing, or you don't want to consider them competitors, maybe they're potential collaborators and you can kind of team up on certain things together. But that is, I think, a really helpful thing that I you know, should have spent more time diving into early on. And yeah, I mean, it goes back to, I think, too, just um, impact measurement is like such a big thing for me now that I used to think in this mindset of, great, we made the donation, so and this is also a mindset that people who aren't in social impact are increasingly in, right? Like they're just, okay, you made the donation, we should get all the credit for making that donation now, and that's it. Let's put out a press release and call it a day. Um, the real thing to invest your time in is measuring the impact of that work and knowing how to do that and placing more emphasis on that versus the commitment you're able to secure. And yeah, that's so impact measurement and beyond the donation, beyond the check, if we want to call it that, is where early on I wish I had learned about a bit more.
Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me for the conversation. And thank you so much for the work that you and your team are doing. You're doing fantastic work. When I think about companies that are doing impact right, Ripple's up there. So congratulations on the work and the success so far.
It's always great to see you, Jeremy, and talk with you. So thank you so much.
This episode is brought to you by Social Impact World, the intelligence layer for corporate impact. To learn more, go to socialimpactworld.com. I'm Jeremy Brown. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the Impact.